Just finished our competition camp here in December. And we covered bottom wrestling, standing up, getting to your feet. And afterwards we did a nice review, sort of for the parents' sake also, because we invite the parents to the last practice. And so, we can show them that their kids did the work they sent them for, and that we did our job as well. So very important to me that we show these people that drove here 16 hours round trip and got a hotel that we did our job, right? And so we took them through the whole deal, right? And several parents after said, man, you have such a grasp on teaching, and the whole bottom wrestling thing is very interesting. So here's a few talking points of what we cover. Number one, we don't go to hand control on bottom, because if I go to hand control, my opponent can reach under my arm and grab my wrist. So you're basically giving your opponent your wrist. If you go to hand control with two hands, your opponent will drive you to your forehead and ball you up and potentially even break you down into bad position. Now, technically, it's okay to go to hand control if you close the hole under your left arm and block them out. But for the most part, we have found over the decades of doing this, and I have spent almost 17,000 hours in a wrestling room with a whistle and a stopwatch, teaching and showing wrestling and putting workers to work. So on all of our years of doing this, I have found that the hand control stand up, where you do close the hole, close the gap, it generally leads to more hassles. So we only get hand control halfway up. So if I get hand control while I'm on my hands and knees, my opponent's going to grab my wrist for the most part. If I wait till I get to my feet to go to hand control, they're probably going to get their hands locked. So we go halfway up. Now, we never stand up from our knees to both of our feet. It's almost impossible to do it. I'm a pretty decent athlete, even at 49 years old, and I can't do it. By myself, without a 150-pound guy on my back, it's even harder. So we look for a step up. First I step up, then I build. That's what the college guys do, right? They step a foot forward, and then if their opponent tackles, they build up. If their opponent doesn't push in, they drive back. So we call it a fight leg. Once I step a foot forward, my two hands are in front of me. Right in front of my nose is the focal point that makes a triangle, a pyramid. So the point of the pyramid, the two bottom points of the pyramid are my hands, and the front pyramid, that's my focal point. Somewhere in that area is where I set my drive leg. And we call that creating a fight. Because once I get there, my opponent gets panicked and they have to start battling. So that's the one time I take possession over the position and really start to work my way to my feet. Then from there, we get to our feet. So basically, once my foot steps to the peak of the triangle, I'm still on my right knee or left knee. My opponent cannot lock hands. Now is the time halfway up. Not when we're down, not when we're up. Halfway up is when to go to hand control. And we don't control the wrist, we control the fingers. Because when I do get to my feet, my opponent's going to try to lock his or her hands. They can't lock their hands when I have their fingers. Plus, when I have your fingers, I can really twist and rotate and manipulate your hand behind me. It's legal. You have all four fingers, but I can put a 500-pound man's hand behind my back, and I put one hand behind my back before I cut away and score. Some people spread the hands and take off running. That doesn't work. We put a hand behind us. So there's kind of talking point number one, some basic concepts, you could even say. Basic concept number two is there's two stand-up positions. One position is off the whistle wrestling, and one is, we call it, he's riding the crap out of me position. So when I'm on bottom, I have to start on those stupid lines. It's called referee's position. If I stand up on the whistle, I have to start on those lines. That's your stand up on the whistle position or referee's position. If I decide not to stand up on the whistle, because some of us, it's just not best. Some of us do stand up on the whistle, but there's certain athletes you may not stand up on the whistle. Or maybe I stood up on the whistle and my opponent returned me to the mat. Now I go to a deep and wide base. So I'm in a completely different power position, because the common positions in wrestling that we battle from we call power positions, right? And if you studied our it's our DVD series bit, within about 2 more weeks it's going to be an online wrestling course. You'll have your PhD in wrestling once you master the basics, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 series. It's going to be the first online academy / training course in the world. It's pretty awesome. 275 concepts and techniques and tactics and moves, for the most part, right around 275. But if you're already familiar with our system and series and stuff, some of this is starting to kind of refresh your mind a little bit. But as far as standing up, we have our power position. So if you will start to teach your wrestlers, okay, we're going to go 5-second goes on bottom. If you get to your feet, you win. We're going to go 10-second goes on bottom. We're going to go 20-second goes, 30-second goes on bottom. You get away, you win. That is your off the whistle start stand-up wrestling. Then what happens if you reverse me or take me down? Now there's no referee's position. My opponent doesn't have to start on the belly button. My opponent can go to a claw, a tight waist, as deep of a tight waist as they want. That's a completely different wrestling position. So I need to have a second power position base. And this is what so many people don't know. And it's pretty simple, actually, and it's basic if you think about it. So now I have 2 bottom positions. One I use off the whistle because the ref makes me. The other one is a much better position. It's my base or power position, or wide and tall base. And we like to not move nonstop on bottom. This is concept number 3. Don't move nonstop on bottom. Sure, you can find one freak out there that can do it. 1 out of every 5,000 people can do it. But you know, there's 8-year-olds that can play Mozart and the piano too. You probably have to go to lessons and listen to what he or she teaches you, because you're probably not a savant, right? So there's some athletic freaks. We don't look at athletic freaks because they're the weirdos. 99.9% of us don't move nonstop on bottom. The college guys don't move on bottom. The famous college Division I world-class wrestlers don't move nonstop. So why would you? We don't. I think it's silly. Causes more issues than it cures. So we like to hold our base and wrestle in sprints, right? And those of you who know our post-tension stand-up series will understand that now you know how to set up your opponent for the stand-up. I set you up for a single leg. I might set you up for my cradle, right? You can set me up for a spladle potentially. I can set you up for my stand-up with our post-tension series, right? I know besides a cradle, you can't turn me unless you have my arm. So I know that you're going to get my arm. So I'm going to use that against you. When you try to get my arm, I'm going to fight. We don't go with the flow, well, except for a shoulder roll. Other than that, we don't go with the flow. We resist. When you attack, I resist. We have resistance wrestling on bottom. We don't wiggle around and fight. We resist only. And while you're trying to get my arms, there's moments there where you're going to let pressure off, and that's when I explode up. There's various positions to let pressure off. Sometimes you'll slide your knee. Sometimes you won't do a knee slide. Sometimes it's an inside-outside or outside leg stand-up. It's too much to go over here, especially on a talking advice video. But think about the not moving non-stop, wrestling in sprints, and if you study our series, you remember the post-tension setup to the stand-up. So basic concept number 4, number 4 is we don't like to defer in wrestling. We like to pick down. And it really doesn't come down to, this goes down to your bottom strategy, and it kind of ties into something else too. So we like to pick bottom 99% of the time, because if I'm winning 2-1 and I defer and you pick bottom, and let's pretend you get away because you're good, it's going to be a close match. Now it's tied. I go into the 3rd period, I'm on bottom and it's tied. That's okay. But I feel like I'm a whole period potentially more fatigued. I'd rather be on bottom in the 2nd period and get my escape and be winning 3-1. Because I don't know about being tied going into the 3rd period, when I can be winning 3-1. I like to win and build momentum, and that kind of makes your opponent sort of scared and doubtful. And I learned this from a real great college coach named Jim Shields. He was one of our coaches at Oklahoma State. And you know, some colleges now defer. It's only been about the past 6 or 7 years I've seen them defer. Still not very often, but back in the day, for about 15 or 20 years, no one deferred. So that's a concept. That's concept number 4, is pick bottom 99% of the time. So if my opponent's an absolute freak on top, I might defer. Or if I'm a beast on top and I love being on top, I might defer, because probably they're going to go down and I get to be on top where I love to be anyway. Plus I get my choice in the third period. So it's kind of like getting your choice twice, right? And that leads us sort of into, we'll just tie in, let's just call it principle number 5, which is really not a technique or a tactic. It's just something to think about, to wrap your mind around. If I have 50 matches, and let's say all 50 matches I get away in the second period, great, I'm really doing awesome. But I got away within the last minute or the last 30 seconds of the period. Who cares? I got an escape. I'm an awesome wrestler. I got away from the bottom position 50 matches in a row. I picked bottom, or my opponent deferred, which you're always going to. I picked bottom and I got away. Now let's look at this. What if you can get away within the first minute? Wow, that's even better, because now you have a minute to get a takedown. Well, let's say 50 times I got away within the first minute, and 32 times I got away within the first 40 seconds. So now you look at, okay, I got away from everybody 50 times in a row in the second period in a minute or less. This is not really a realistic expectation, but let's just pretend. Now I followed up my escape with a takedown 30% of the time. So 30% of my matches, I had a 3-point second period. So how many points was my escape worth? 3 points. I got an escape, and I did it early enough in the second period to follow it up with a takedown. So now you start to say, it's like putting feathers on a scale. We're starting to tip the odds in our favor of becoming an elite wrestler and winning more big matches. Now I used to not be great on bottom. Now I'm a getaway second period every time guy, or almost every time. Let's just say 95% of the time. Good. Now I'm a getaway every time within the first minute guy. Good. Now I'm a getaway every time within the first minute, but half of those times I get away within the first 35 or 40 seconds. Then we take it farther and say 35% of those times I followed it up with a takedown. Now, 1/3 of my matches, I have 3-point second periods. Every time I'm on bottom in the second period, I put 3 points on the board 35% of the time. And again, these are just made up stats and numbers. But you start to get the idea of the importance of not just getting away, but getting away early enough that you have time to follow it up with a takedown, and then to actually follow it up with a takedown. Not all the time. We're not going to do that all the time. Our opponents are very good. But if you start to see how many times your athletes can get that 3 points in that second period, you start to say, man, this really starts to put me at a brand new level that I used to I didn't even know. I didn't think about these things, right? So there's some tactics and ideas on bottom wrestling that should definitely help your game. Good luck. Check us out at PurlerWrestling.com. More competition camps. As many as 60 state champions and medalists come almost every month. We have a once-a-month overnight camp here in St. Louis, Missouri at my 17,000 square foot training center. Kids flying in from Maryland, Oregon, Wyoming, all for a weekend of wrestling. Tons of Midwest guys, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, of course, Missouri, Illinois, Kansas, Nebraska, a lot of Texas kids. Come check us out, PurlerWrestling.com. Good luck.